Hey everyone, I am back. It's kind of weird, like 3 times in a row, really quickly. So we'll see how that goes. I obviously been moving around a little bit in my apartment to see where the lighting is best, because the indoor lighting is not the greatest and not actually a lot. Like, there's not a lot of it. So, um, I'm in my room now because my window's a little bit closer, so there's a little bit more natural light in addition to my overhead light, which might be a little bit too bright. I don't know. Um, I know that I talked a little bit last time about wanting to talk about some of my morbidity and childhood quirks and stuff. This might be a little bit more about where my like trauma started. We'll see. Um, but there's like reasons for why I am the way that I am and all that jazz. So I know people talk about having early memories or childhood memories, and the reality is that before like 3 to 5, there's really probably not a lot that most of us remember, but I do have some early memories that stand out, whether they're like actual or just perceived. But a lot of them are flashes. There's one of me laying in my crib, looking up at a figure in the dark, watching me, feeling this notion that was my dad. Asking my cousin to put a diaper on me that was absolutely too small because I wanted to be like my younger brother. And then also sitting with my parents in the ER waiting room when they told us that my youngest brother had passed. My mom says that I wasn't there, so that could be a false memory. And then throughout my childhood, like getting upset over his death, just out of nowhere sometimes, like years later, and being told it's been long enough to be able to be over it. So I have CPTSD, which is complex PTSD. I can remember trauma from as young as 3, maybe actually 2. And with my healing journey with therapy and stuff, I worked through a good majority of my adult trauma up to a certain point. But I have a good grasp on it and my reactions in relation to all of that trauma, and I know where I have more of a struggle dealing with it, where it's not the aspect of being assaulted versus the way that other people reacted. Um, it wasn't until I was at my bio dad's funeral a few years ago, um, learning about his child, not his funeral. We were getting ready for his memorial and stuff, but learning about trauma from his childhood, from family, and that actually kind of being the triggering point of remembering a lot of things that some things I didn't remember for a long time, and then some that I didn't really remember correctly or in the right light. Um, just yeah. So sometime after my youngest brother was born in July of 1992, and before my third birthday in October of that year, I developed ITP as a result of medication interactions. ITP is idiopathic thrombocytopenic purpura, thrombo thrombocytopenic purpura. So basically, I had no platelet function. Um, Apparently, this in like children can typically or will typically clear up on its own, which was not the case with me. But so my mom first noticed unexplained bruising when she took me in, and they took blood. I ended up bleeding through the band-aid. I think she said like they put the band-aid on and it wouldn't stop bleeding, like it bled through the band-aid and just kept on. Um, ultimately, I had to have a blood transfusion. I think maybe just one. But there's 2 points I remember during that time. So one of them is being in the hospital and getting to eat Jello and popsicles, which is more of a fun memory. But the other one is actually being immobilized with a Velcro blanket because I wouldn't stay still for them. And my mom actually confirmed this when we talked about it a few years ago because she said that she had to leave the room to keep herself from trying to interfere because she knew that they had to do what they were doing. So I'm pretty sure that experience is why I'm claustrophobic. Um, it would make a lot of sense. Just saying, especially since the my claustrophobia is not always consistent, and it's more to do with not so much being enclosed, but like having something too close to my chest, or like tight spaces are rough, but it's like, I guess, situational. But if I can't breathe and my air is actually cut off, like I'll panic. So it wasn't long after that that my brother died, which was in December of 1992. He developed quick onset pneumonia, and the doctor said there wasn't anything that could have been done about it in time to prevent him from dying. So this isn't just my trauma; it's my family's trauma. My my family experienced that. It didn't just affect me. And it wasn't the only heavy thing that my parents were dealing with. Obviously, they had their own life together and everything that was going on. I had just come through a fucking ordeal with not having platelet function, and um, it was a time. And then there was a lot of other stuff going on that I won't get into. Um, for a long time, I mostly stayed with my aunt in Odessa, and my younger brother was with my parents. I have a memory of my mom telling me that we were moving to Georgetown over the phone when I was 3. Mom says that I moved with them, but I remember coming afterwards, and that could totally be a false memory, but it could be real, who knows. Um, the continued trauma throughout my childhood, it really stemmed from a lot of different um, things. It was a real unfortunate cocktail of circumstances. So obviously at the time in the 90s, there's a significant lack of awareness about PTSD, depression, and neurodivergence in general. Not only that, but as a female child who was very good at masking by the time my little brother was diagnosed with ADHD, um, and stayed very good at masking to the point where sometimes as an adult I struggle to know myself fully. Um, my family wouldn't understand for a long time how significantly we were each affected by trauma, and how each of us were dealing with our own mental health struggles. My parents were never intentionally abusive or malicious to us, but the damage was still done nonetheless. Um, I learned to avoid physical punishment early. That was something that I recognized I didn't like, and so I did my best to stay out of trouble. The worst of the physical punishment was uh, abuse directed by my grandparents at my brother's. I was an adult before I fully grasped how fucked up our childhood was. As the favored child, it's really hard to look back at that and recognize how bad it was. On my end, there was a lot of emotional and psychological abuse, much more so than the physical, but I carry a lot of guilt now, um, for how much I struggle with these things, and I have so much trauma from that. When I can recognize now that my brothers were dealing with the psychological and emotional abuse, but they were also being beaten and physically abused because my grandparents were kind of trash humans. Not kind of, they were. Um, and it bothers me how long it was before I was able to recognize that. Um, my parents love us. They loved us. They still do. Um, but they weren't given good examples of how to be good parents, and they worked a lot to try to make ends meet. My mom worked a lot more in the afternoons, evenings, and at nights, and my dad was a plumber, so he was gone a lot from early until evening. And so my grandparents, like, we lived with my grandparents from the time that I was 7, all of us in one house, and they were the ones who were there. And my parents weren't around a lot to really truly see how bad it was. And that's not an excuse. I'm not making excuses, but the way that my brothers were treated, particularly my older brother, who was not my grandparents' biological grandson, it was just fucking horrible. And we all survived, but I can say that I'm thankful that my youngest brother didn't have to experience any of that. I think about how life could have gone, and the possibilities are kind of scary. Um, I realized a while back that I have, for much of my life, wished that it could have been me that died and not him. But maybe I survived because I would have the resilience to change things. Whether or not in my family, like elsewhere at least, maybe he didn't, because it would have only been more tragic when it did happen, when his time did come. I don't know, but I do know that I'm here to change lives. I haven't survived everything that's hit me up until this point just to not do something meaningful. Um, Knowing death from such a young age has made me a little bit morbid, as I guess some people would say. I can see it too. I can call myself that. Um, I have plans for my body after I die. I have a funeral playlist, which is a public playlist also on my channel. It's called Songs to Die For. Y'all should check it out. Um, and I have an auto obituary in progress. I'm not planning on dying anytime soon. I still think that it's my decision to make if things are ever dire enough and I find myself without any obligations left, to keep me here. But I still have years to go before that. And that's the reality. But the other reality is that the universe could decide otherwise. Most people aren't prepared for death, because they forget that good health doesn't stop accidents and good health doesn't stop natural disasters. And it just, life is unpredictable. And I don't want to be kept alive by machines. I don't want to be poisoned with chemicals and buried in a box in the ground. And my people know these things about me. And so, yes, I've been called morbid because I have these awarenesses and I have plans, and I do still need to, like, actually, like, have an official will or living will or whatever, because as much as I have these plans and I've told people these things, that doesn't guarantee anything unless, I legally make sure that's going to happen. But um, it's important to think about those things, and it's important to know those things. Um, and you don't have to be morbid to recognize that I need to let somebody know that if anything ever happens, that this or whatever, like, don't think of it as morbid. Think of it as making sure that you're not leaving any loose ends, or you're not leaving any um inconveniences. I guess I think of it that way, and that's not necessarily the best mindset either, but you know what I'm saying. um I am also still gonna further talk about childhood oddities. There are other things I plan on getting into, and it's weird because I'm writing about. I've known since I started remembering things from my childhood and adolescence more clearly that I need to be writing things down, and it's something I put off, but shadow work is important. Integration is important. I struggle with a lot of things in this life, and with, honestly, like, to an extent, who I am, because I still have a lot of work to do with healing and with integrating my shadow, and with learning to love my shadow as much as I love the easy things to love about myself. So there's a lot that I'm finding words for, and that I'm working on, and I do want to share some of it, and some of it is also getting to that point where, like, I'm ready, just because there are things that I've never really talked to people about, or things that I've only recently finally kind of told somebody, that put some clarity on my experience as a child, and how good I was at masking. And you guys know how much I feel that it's important to talk about those things, because when we don't, we end up with kids who grow up into adults not recognizing that it's not that there's something wrong with them, it's just that their brain isn't like everybody else's brain, and that they think differently, or that um, they're not ever going to be normal, but there's honestly no such thing as normal. So I'm going to keep talking about these things. I will be back, and if you made it this far, thank you. I love y'all, and I will see y'all soon. Bye.